And we are live.
And apparently not yet on my side.
Right, but that's,
So
we are live.
Okay, can you have the link?
Yep, I'm working on it.
All right, yeah, okay. Hi, everybody. I'm Mahabeli from Cairo, Egypt, and I'm the co-director of Virtually Connecting. And this is the first time we do a Virtually Connecting on Zoom live on YouTube, so welcome to this first of ours. And we're reconnecting with Digital Pedagogy Lab at UMW in the US. I'm going to ask the folks on site to introduce themselves real quick, and then I'll ask the virtual folks to introduce themselves. I'll type in the order of that. And yeah, and then we'll have a conversation. Now, we have a larger number of people than we usually have because we don't have the 10-person limit. So we're just going to ask everyone to think about what we call intentionally equitable hospitality. So we're just going to try to make sure that everyone who wants to speak gets a chance to speak. We have limited time with the on-site guests, so we want to make sure that they have an opportunity to speak, but also that virtual folks get a chance to participate, that women and minorities have priority in asking questions and participating. And if someone feels shy to speak up, they can type it in the text chat and we can say it out loud for them. If someone wants to keep their video on, they can. If they want to turn it off, that's okay as well. So on-site folks, take it away.
Okay, I'm Sherry Spelitz, and I am teaching the digital identity track.
I'm Kelly Baker, and I am teaching how to be a public scholar workshop.
I'm Sean Michael Morris, and I'm the founder of Digital Pedagogy Lab and the director.
Hi, everyone. My name is Ruha Benjamin, and I'm a guest speaker this year.
On-site buddies.
Oh, I didn't know if we introduced ourselves. Okay, sorry. Hi, I'm good.
You can come over here.
Oh, we're gonna be weird. Okay. Sorry. You can actually see full body. I'm Clarissa Sorensen Enru, and I'm doing the critical pedagogy and STEM track here. I'm going back away.
Hi, I'm Kate Malloy. I'm kept the Gavin's acoustic design track, and I'm teaching the How to Ruin Course workshop.
Hi, I'm Samantha Streamer Van Russo, and I'm doing the community-based digital pedagogy workshop.
Okay, can we start the virtual intros with Melanie? And then I have the list written down in the chat in the order.
Hi, I'm Melanie White. I'm sitting on my front porch in Ottawa, Canada.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth Ellis. I'm at the Open University in the UK.
Yay.
Vanessa?
Yes, I'm Vanessa. I'm retired, but still getting into it. And I'm sitting in my bedroom with an unruly cat in Yuma, Colorado. The cat may bounce across the street at any time.
Hi, I'm Teresa McKinnon. I'm in the Midlands in the UK. I'm really grateful to have this opportunity to join up and find new people on Twitter too. So thanks for that. And looking forward to hearing more about what's going on at DigPed.
Greg?
Sure, I'm Greg Very, and I am sitting in my office in East Haddam, Connecticut. Excited to join this and just watching along on Twitter, so keep sharing, so it's fun.
My name is Dana Torieri, and I'm joining from Denver, Colorado.
Hi, I'm Sybil Preby. I teach in DSCS in Wapaton, North Dakota, and I'm sitting in my little house.
Hi, I'm Amanda Potts, and I am in Ottawa with Melanie, but not actually with her, just sort of near her. And yeah, this is my first time doing this. I'm very excited. Thanks to Sherry for the invitation.
Hi, I'm Bill Ivey. I'm in my old classroom at a girls' school in Western Massachusetts.
Hi, I'm Rebecca Hogue. I'm a co-director of Virtually Connecting, and I'm excited to see Ottawa folk here because I'm working on my PhD at U Ottawa, but I live in Sunnyvale, California right now, so I'm in California.
Autumn.
Oh, is it my turn? I thought Tracy went next.
Yes, you're right. But Tracy's gone.
Oh, okay. Okay. I wasn't sure. Okay, hi everybody. My name is Autumn Keynes, and I am a co-director of Virtually Connecting. I'm also an instructional designer at the University of Michigan Dearborn.
All right. Thanks, everybody. So on site, tell us how the first day has been.
I like that you're looking at me. So I'm doing Sherry's track on digital identities, and it is amazing. And I had to confess how much I'm on Twitter as part of that, which is not good.
But mostly I'm with her on Twitter, so we're clear. And also since we're not being supervised from home, we're having a lot
more
screen
time.
Yeah. Yeah, so far it's been, I'm delighted. I'm absolutely thrilled. And it's a very different experience to lead a track. But I'm also finding that it feels, the way that we're going right now feels about right. So I introduce a thing and then everybody talks about it. And then I move us on to the next thing and then everybody talks about it. So, so I'm really, really happy with the interaction and just the development of the group itself.
I know what you're like in class because Sherry guest taught my class once here in Cairo. And but this, I say something is actually a really provocative thing. So I want to know one of the activities you've done with them today.
So far, actually the introductory activity, which is a little bit different. I brought postcards from Vienna and I situated them around the room. And I asked people to first spend a couple of minutes looking at all of the different postcards. And then they were asked to select one postcard that called to them. I also said good luck because someone might grab the one that you wanted before, but it all worked out. And then I asked people to jot a note, a thought, a word on the back of the postcard, whatever, just whatever was there. And then with that, to then circulate around the room and sort of meet folks as you go and talk about your postcard and what made you choose this one. And so it was a wonderful way for people to get to know each other. My goal was to get away from the icebreaker that everyone seems to dread.
Yes.
So
yes.
And
yes, you did that successfully. It was lovely. I was like, and now I have a lovely postcard that is broody and peaceful, and I love it, and it's great. Yeah, it was lovely.
And Ruha, tell us what it's been like for you so far, and can you give us a sneak peek about your keynote?
Yeah, well, lunch was great. So my flight got in really late, so I didn't get here until about 2 a.m. So I just slept in a little bit and then met Sean for lunch. So I don't have much to report so far. But for the talk this afternoon, I'm going to be presenting a combination of the themes in the 2 books that just came out, Race After Technology and Captivating Technology. And what I'm hoping is that we can think together in the discussion about the implications for pedagogy. And so rather than try to connect all the dots in the talk, I really want the talk to be generative of a conversation where we can think together about, the implications of moving from an access framework to technology, making sure that there's equitable access, to thinking about equitable design. What does it mean to think carefully about the values, the assumptions, the politics that are built in to technologies of all sorts, and then together as a group kind of, choosing a few examples from the context in which everyone here is working to think through the implications there. And so the books really are a Kickstarter for conversation rather than trying to wrap it up in any kind of neat bow in terms of what we should do.
Thanks, Ruha. I missed hearing you talk, so I'm really looking forward to listening to that and getting your books. Sean, this is your what, 5th, 10th digital pedagogy?
It's the 5th annual, so we have a week-long annual event, and this is the 5th one, which is great. As you know, we've had them all over the place. In addition to that, so I've actually lost count on how many we have, but yeah, it's fantastic. I mean, every opening of this event surprises me, and it's the warmth of the people that are here, the sincerity of the people who gather. it really is just a remarkable community of people. I spend all this time making this thing happen, and then I get to just sit back and watch people be amazing, and it's incredible. I love it so much, and I'm delighted to have everyone here this year. Everyone who's teaching, everyone who's a fellow, everyone who's keynoting. It's going to be a fantastic event.
Yeah, I concur.
Oh,
Yeah.
Maha, you're muted.
Maha, you're muted.
Virtual folks, I was just going to say, does anybody have any questions or comments?
I'll sort of throw a one out here. So for everybody that's there, who were you most excited to meet for the first time in person for the first time when you got there?
Sherry. Sherry and John.
Wow. I have to, I can't, you just can't pick just one.
Yeah.
I think for me it's been.
Pick a few then.
I'll answer that in a different way, just to kind of go back to the unique community that's being cultivated here. My clue for how special this particular convening is that on Twitter, you see people checking in and getting excited en route to the event. Like people are like, I'm getting on the train now. I'm picking up my bag. I'm like pictures of luggage, like all of the en route tweets are so excited, and you can feel that there's a kind of magnetic pull to the community. That is my clue, because that doesn't happen at a lot of the professional meetings I go to, where people are like selfies with their luggage. You know, there's the ticket agent. And so like that tells you that people are really excited at more than just a kind of intellectual learner level, but their whole being is reconnecting with the community that they care about. And so that's more of a collective response. I think everyone is drawn to that communal experience more than any one personality.
Well, and I think it's cool too to see every single person that we only see as a little avatar on Twitter, so that I keep walking up to people and I'm like, I think
yes,
I know you on the internet. But your picture has been a cat, right, for the entire time. So I'm not sure. So that's kind of lovely too, to have this like in-person community building when we've already done that online. So it's great to see folks and make them become familiar faces now, as opposed to that tiny little circle.
Yes. Yes. The experience of fangirling in my own track, like Kelly Baker's.
I'm gonna climb under the table now.
I had that experience, and it's glorious. And I have to say, Rissa gives the very best hugs. So. I'll give you another one after. So questions, I guess.
Virtual folks? Greg, do you want to unmute and say that? I think you were trying to say something.
Yeah, I was going to try to come up with a question. No, but now looking back, I was going through some of the common feeds that I saw were Sarah talking about access in open and in our critical digital pedagogies in terms of how we onboard students. And then, so what are some of the what are the ways that we could support students before they are in our classrooms? Should we? Is that our job? What are people thinking there?
I haven't been thinking about that question, so I pass.
Is that a Sean answer?
I could say something to that.
Oh,
but
yeah,
I might.
Please do. Yeah, come on in.
I'm in Sarah's track. So I'm the idea here is that you're really wanting to make sure that you're accounting for the entire person when you're teaching them or learning from them, which is really the combination of what you're doing in terms of teaching anyone. It's really a teaching and learning thing. So I think that trying to bring a person who is able to learn to the classroom is really kind of the point in how we figure out our institutions to manage that and change our institutions so that we and ourselves so that we can manage that best. And not even manage, but at least converse with folks. Maybe managing is the wrong idea. Maybe it's more about the conversation and making sure that people are involved in a way that's authentic to them. That's kind of the gist of what she's going for in the real college track. Okay, I'm leaving again.
I think that if we're talking about trying to reach or sort of prepare our classrooms for students in before they're even there, I mean, I think that's a systemic thing that we have to look at in terms of what are colleges, what are they setting up to do. You know, we were talking over the weekend. We had a weekend workshop this year called Camp Critical Pedagogy, and we were talking over the weekend that oh shucks, I lost my point. That's just the worst thing, especially live.
Camp Critical Pedagogy.
Yeah.
Systemic ideas.
Yeah, so we were talking about how there's this sort of glowy idea of what college is supposed to be when we're first growing up, and it's like this amazing place where you learn about yourself, and then you go on and you strike out into adulthood, and it's this incredible experience. And then when you arrive in college, you find that there's actually a lot of sort of lining up for the door kind of things that you have to do, and there's learning analytics being applied to the way that you learn, and there's all this sort of thing that's happening that has nothing to do with that glowy idea. And so I think that figuring out ways to make the institution either echo that sort of glowy idea or something in between. You know, I mean, there are practical issues that universities face that we can't really just get rid of, but there's but we have to sort of be looking at that almost nostalgic, almost kind of mythical idea of what college is, and try to actually prepare that ground for students so that when they arrive, they don't face that kind of disappointment of, oh, hey, this is just really, really expensive high school.
Well, this also reminds me of what Ruha used to talk about, which is discriminatory design. Like, in what ways are college applications turning people off from even applying? I heard, like, for example, in Germany, they say Syrian refugees are welcome, but the application is in German and it's very complicated to fill it out. So sure, they're welcome and it's free. It's that they have the access, but it's not designed in a way that's hospitable or welcoming, right?
No, absolutely. I mean, I have a son who just graduated high school, who's starting college. So I've spent the last year working on these applications with him, and I'm teaching at a university, and I found it completely prohibitive. I wanted to quit many times. And I'm like, I teach at one of these places. So imagine if you have whatever degrees of separation from the whole mystique of academia and you're trying to navigate it. I totally understood why there should be multiple, not only changing that particular route in terms of all of the hoops people have to jump through, but that there should be a wide array of avenues to be able to, you know, get to some kind of fulfillment and flourishing in your life. But, you know, it was just so ironic to me that I was, you know, I'm like, you are coming to a place that I teach and I can't even like jump through these hoops with you properly. And so it's completely designed to sift and sort and reproduce hierarchies, not by accident, by design, you know.
So often that ends up being the case, and it is really disheartening. I mean, even if we're talking about our consumer systems, right? I think about like just some of the design principles in social media that are based on really, you know, psychological profiles that we know work because of gambling, right? That are really created because, you know, they're meant to keep your eyes on a screen. And I really worry about that because I do think some of those design principles end up seeping their way into our learning systems as well, right? Like, and there's these assumptions, like if you're logged into the system, that means you're learning, right? And that is not necessarily the case. You could actually be learning a lot more if you logged onto the system for just like a couple of minutes and downloaded the materials and you were spending time with them offline, right? But because that can't be tracked and because that can't be measured, it can send a signal sometimes that that learning isn't happening. And it's just, it's really problematic. And I'm just so happy that you all are gathered there to talk about those kind of things and help us to suss those nuances out, because I do think it's incredibly misleading, but it's also there's so much potential for harm if we're not critical about these things in the way that we think about them.
Yeah, thank you for that.
Melanie, you had a question in the chat. Go ahead.
Yeah, I had a question, but also what Autumn is saying is really relevant for us in Ontario, because we have a new government and they're making some changes to course requirements for high school students and looking at having 2 online learning credits. And my experience both teaching and taking online courses is that it's an entirely different way of learning. And I'm not sure that students are prepared or being prepared for that kind of learning. It's the whole myth of the digital native, and that they come into because they're born into this digital world, they somehow have a knowledge and sense of how to navigate it. And I'm realizing through my own children and my own experience with it, they actually don't have the skills and abilities to navigate it. And I don't know who's sort of creating skill sets so that we can actually teach them those skill sets. Can anybody answer that?
You know, I can answer it a little bit, but I do want to hear what the people on site have to say about it, only because I teach how to teach online. And the first thing my students need is that how to learn online. And so I also teach a foundations course in instructional design, and I actually had to write a little note to myself.
Oh, you muted.
You muted Rebecca, yeah.
Sorry, I had to remind myself about how much my students have to learn how to learn in the first class. And so I think the challenge with the Ontario regulation, it's not a bad thing that students need to take online courses, although that first credit course should be how to learn online. And that should be the credit course. But the teachers aren't prepared. We don't have the teachers prepared to teach it. And so you can't just put this thing in when the teachers are not trained to teach online. So they sort of put the cart before the horse.
I think there are also, if I can add, I think there's also some embedded assumptions that we understand teaching online and that we're doing it right. I'm not convinced that the instructional design that we use now is the very best possible instructional design for online learning. And so the idea of requiring students to take online classes when, from my perspective, a lot of online learning is lower quality than what we get in a classroom, feels like honestly, you know what it feels like? It feels like it's feeding an industry. It doesn't actually feel like it's about learners. It feels like we have these LMSs and we have these people that we pay to do these things, and so let's feed this industry and the LTIs and the apps and all of those things that go along with online learning. That doesn't feel like it's about the students at all. The LMS, learning inside of an LMS or VLE is nothing like the rest of the internet. And so they're not learning anything about being digital at that point. They're just learning how to navigate the LMS. Being a digital citizen is a whole lot more than knowing where the discussion is located. That's my thought about it. But tell us how you really
At the same time, my students feel safe in the LMS. They actually they begged me, and I talked to Rebecca, and I've talked to other people. So a lot of people know the story, and I just shared a link in chat about my reflections on the whole. But overall, the majority of them begged me to go back into the LMS because their lives are busy. They didn't want to have to learn how to blog or set up an RSS feed and how to do all of that. They're like, this is a children's lit class. Just teach me my children's lit and let me move on. And I'm kind of like, that's exactly why you need to learn this, because this digital stuff is children's literacy now. But we can, to get over that a little bit. So I did a kind of a hybrid one this time where it was like, you can use your WordPress site or you can use Blackboard, and I'll just put the RSS feed inside of it. And we'll see if I don't get destroyed in my feedback. But I also knew I messed up that semester too, because you know, university pressures, but I'm going to stop now. But yeah, so I just wanted to bring up a point that like my kids want the LMS. I shouldn't say kids, sorry, Sarah. My students. I just Sarah was just getting mad at everybody for calling students kids. My students want to be in the LMS.
Melanie, I'd like to try to answer your question. I'm having my students, my online students specifically, and even my hybrid students, complete a metacognition survey before we even start, just so that they ask themselves, like, how do I feel about my learning? How do I feel about, can I upload a document? Do I know how to download a file? Do I know certain things? And then it just kind of happened, you know, perfectly this summer. I took 2 of my own courses. I've taught online for many, many years, haven't ever taken a strictly online class myself. And I did this summer and I learned so much. I'm not a procrastinator, so that's one thing I don't connect with my students. They procrastinate, wait till the deadline, you know, the day of the deadline, that type of thing. But the mansplaining that happened, and I'm very concerned now about my own students having to deal with mansplaining in my classroom, and I don't pick up on it and that type of thing. I'm kind of rambling. I don't know if that answers your question, but I think having them actually ask themselves, am I ready for this? Do I know how to do the things that this course requires of me?
Yeah, it does answer my question. I think the metacognitive piece is really important. But I'm thinking actually, I'm just going through this First Nations, Métis, and Inuit additional qualification. So learning about that, because in Canada, we're bringing First Nations literature into our grade 11 English courses. So as I'm gaining that knowledge and I'm going through this online learning and having to post in discussions, I'm noticing a certain requirement of not only just how to navigate Blackboard or whatever learning system you have, where to look for things, how to find discussions, how to upload documents. There's also managing each unit and the volume of work, and how do I know when to scan and how do I know when to read deeply, and looking at the types of questions, how do those questions and how do you respond to them online? So if I just quickly summarize the discussion piece of it, I noticed some of the teachers working with me were making comments like, great work, excellent effort. And to me, that's not a discussion. That's not really feedback. That's not generating anything. Like, it's fine to comment on what you really enjoy, but we need to come to a place where we can have critical conversations online and say what we wonder about, what we question, what we disagree with, and be able to do that in online learning. And I'm looking at a group of teachers going, we don't know how to do this.
Can I break in for a second? Just because this is something that I find a niggle about sometimes, which is that we refer to it as online learning, when I think it's more accurate to refer to it as digital learning. You've got digital learning that happens online and you have digital learning that happens offline, because of course you don't need to be connected in order to be learning digitally. And all of the skills and things that are required, I mean, you're quite right that the skills that are required for learning digitally are, you know, some of them are transferable into a kind of an offline or analog space, but some of them aren't. But one of the things that I find really interesting, of course, is that sometimes students will be doing things digitally, for instance, using a Word document, and they often don't think that that's part of the process of learning, but of course it is. But because it's not online, she uses in inverted commas, it doesn't often, I think, get interrogated in the same way.
So while we're in a pause, I might put out there that several of us haven't had lunch yet.
Oh my
And
God, I thought this was the second half of lunch.
We kind of need to eat, else we're gonna die in the afternoon.
Yeah, of course.
So
I'm gonna crash Sherry's seminar.
Yeah, I was just about to ask if you guys have to go, so we can keep going online, and we can let you guys go have lunch.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for taking the time. Ruha, I'm so happy to finally have a synchronous combo with you. And we're looking forward to watching your keynote later today, right?
We do too. Thank you,
everyone.
Bye.
Thank
We're going to
you.
stay online and live on YouTube for folks to continue the conversation. There's a lot of interesting stuff happening in the chat as well.
I actually have to go feed my kids lunch, so I'm gonna go, but I can keep watching later. Bye.
Bye.
Bye,
Bye.
Amanda.
Great to see you.
Bye, Amanda. Good seeing you again. David, you just joined in. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Oh yeah, I apologize. I thought I must have had the times wrong. I'm Dave Goodrich, and I am a learning experience designer in the hub at Michigan State University. Hi, everybody.
Welcome. Great to see you, Dave.
Known as Ranger Davey. And then when he came in, because the screen had so many people in it, it said David Joseph. I'm like, who's David Joseph? And then it turned out, I'm like, okay, I know this person.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know why it says Joseph in there, but that is my middle name.
Yeah, so so someone sort of knew that at Zoom or something.
It's a work account and it's connected to LDAP, is my guess.
I think
But
you're
your
right.
secret's safe with her.
I put in it's on somewhere in the Twitter feeds, but I'm actually it's a really tiny grant, but I'm actually going to apply this summer. It's due the 27th. Once I get off this call, I'm going to write this thing. That's why I'm writing it out loud on Twitter. But I want to go after this. Like, I want to do something for first generation college students, because if you actually look at, for us in Connecticut, community college numbers, the attrition rate in online schools, it's crazy. Almost criminal. Like, we're basically taking money for these kids to take online class, for these students to take online classes that we could know that 45 to 50% are going to fail, which is, then you should stop. Let's stop. Sorry. So I want to figure out what is there something I can do, especially in New Haven, to help students. So I'll be
Yeah, and it's the challenge is that, even from the beginning, the literature says that there should be a 4 to 6 week online learning orientation before they go into an online class. Yeah. And that orientation should teach them things like, so when they get to their first class, they shouldn't need to learn how to navigate the LMS, because they should have done that in an orientation. And so that they can actually start focusing on the learning and not, all those other things. But there's that huge first 2 week cognitive load that doesn't get put into the design considerations.
But 4 weeks is a lot.
Well, and the other thing is it really all students? Like, if you don't have an introductory experience, right, and I'm having an online class, I might have half the class may be digitally literate and may have taken lots of online classes before and may be ready to go, but what about the other half who maybe aren't, right? And so it depends some leveling as well. Something else I've been thinking about, there was an article in HuffPost a couple of months ago that got a lot of attention because of these online program, OPM, these online program management companies that come in and will build out a lot of online programming, and they really jack up the prices of them. And I don't know, it's not even that they jack them up so much, but they charge the same amount, right, for a face-to-face course as they do for an online course. But this article was really saying, with an online course, you have a lot of upfront costs, but once you get those upfront costs out of the way, like, you're making a lot of money every time you run that course.
Well, see, I don't agree with so much of that if it's done right.
To Sean's point, though, about that we're still trying to figure a lot of this out, right? That there's a lot of online instructors who are not necessarily like, they're kind of new to it. We just kind of throw people in the deep end. I mean, it seems really unfair to me to create a course. And I agree with you, Rebecca. That's when you're not doing online learning the right way, right? But if you're creating an online course that's basically a drill and skill kind of thing, people watch a lot of videos and take a lot of quizzes type of, and yeah, you spend a lot of money to make those videos up front. And then you charge students the same amount that they would charge if they were going to, a face-to-face class, a brick and mortar class. It just seems.
Well, but if that brick and mortar class has got 200 students, they're not getting any different of an educational experience. They're probably getting a better one online.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's
actually, nobody really checks what's happening. Nobody really checks what's happening in the face-to-face classrooms. We don't know what's happening.
I know my students better in online courses than I ever would know them face to face. But that's because of the nature of the types of courses I teach.
Yeah, and it's because of the kind of online instructor you are.
I do find a difference in my grad students and undergrads. I mean, there's life experience involved and just age and maybe even the opportunity to use actual technology in a workplace before, college versus technology in a high school. But yeah, I cringe every time our university, like it happens, we're going to do this online certification class before you teach online. I want to walk around and be like, no, not until you can go around and point out to me who can teach face-to-face well and who can't. Don't tell me like I have to take a quiz or test to teach online, because nobody gets instruction on any kind of pedagogy unless you're in a school of ed, because that's what your instruction was. So we can fix that, start teaching some how to teach online classes in every grad program.
Well, and I think you could say the same thing about students too. So we've been talking about how students don't know how to learn online, but a lot of students don't know how to learn face-to-face, right? A lot of students don't know what metacognition is. They don't know how to read critically. They don't know, right?
It took me it was my 4th year of my undergrad before I figured out how I learned face-to-face. Like, yeah.
I don't know if I really learned how I learn and how humans learn until graduate school, to tell you the truth. I kind of figured it out. I kind of fumbled my way through undergrad, but I didn't really have that metacognitive view, that kind of bird's eye view, probably until graduate school. So yeah, I don't know. There's a lot.
Yeah, see, my problem was I listened too much to the people that were telling me how I should learn, instead of doing the self-reflection about how I actually learn.
Yeah.
Because we coach people on how they should learn.
Yeah.
Like you shouldn't cram and you should do this and you should do that. But that's not the metacognitive work of figuring out the individual, how you as an individual learn.
But doesn't this go to, sorry, I think that's really interesting, because one of the things that I think that sometimes I feel like we fall into a bit of a rabbit hole is that that digital learning or online learning is it's like a one hit, whereas digital learning requires almost more very specific kind of support, ongoing support from a person who is communicating with students in a particular way, which I think somebody made the point earlier about kind of us not teaching people to facilitate in a digital space and how to facilitate that kind of, which is a different thing from direct teaching, I guess.
I think that's right too, Elizabeth. And, I do faculty development for folks who sometimes never taught online before. And I mean, I've been doing this for like 15 years, and I can't tell you how shocked I am when, I start working with some folks and they're like, oh yeah, we do that, but we do it face-to-face. The training to like teach somebody how to teach online is a completely face-to-face experience. And over and over and over again.
I was thinking that in the midst of what all you're saying is that there sort of needs to be a degree of giving, making sure that students and faculty who learn to learn or teach online need to have the agency to choose how much they need, but to have the options available and clear to them so that the ones who have no idea can figure out what they need. And that support isn't like a one-off at the beginning type of thing, but an ongoing thing. Because I mean, online courses are not all the same as each other anyway.
Absolutely.
And sometimes what I worry about doing in my class when I teach in non-traditional ways is that I worry that I teach students to do something that won't be appreciated in other courses that are more traditional. So when I teach them to write less formally on their blog and to cite by links, then they go to another course and that skill won't be useful in the other courses, but hopefully helpful to them outside of academia. But it's also helping them think about that. Go ahead, Elizabeth.
Sorry, I really kind of recognize what you're saying there. And one of the things that I think that we almost don't have enough, possibly don't have enough critical thinking on or enough research on, is sort of kind of what I think of as sophisticated opting out. So a student who has had exposure to digital learning and online learning and understands exactly what's being asked of them and feels confident learning, and then they make the choice not to engage in a particular way, and that needs to be respected. But I also feel like that decision-making process needs to be understood better, because often it's not linked to I think people have a tendency to go, oh, you know, they're just voting with their feet because they don't know how to do it, rather than actually the student as an individual is choosing not to do it in a way that has been sort of designed or worked on. So what is the thought process that goes with that, and what can we learn about the process of learning, and what can we learn about design for learning in digital spaces as a result of that?
One of the things that I'm seeing or hearing is sort of this, as if online learning was one thing. And that's sort of like, because when Sean made that statement about it not being as good as whatever, I'm like, but you're equating face-to-face, you're not saying face-to-face is one thing, but you're saying online learning is one thing. And it's just as variable as the face-to-face experience.
It's something, I'm sorry.
Go ahead. I was just going to say, so if you take 10 online courses, you might take an 11th one that's completely different than all the other 10 that you weren't prepared for. And like, it's changed so much. Dana was just saying it's been changing so much over the past few years. Go ahead, Greg. You forgot? You're muted.
There's responses I want to have to like every one of those points, but in terms of that example, I feel like I could just be like, send me your YouTube, your URL, or your Twitch feed, and that'd be like, oh, if you have those, like not your Instagram, that doesn't count. But if I could, like, if I'm seeing you, because it's you're not, you know, well, it could count. I mean, I shouldn't say that. I shouldn't badmouth the network just because I'm not on it when it's owned by Facebook. Yes, I will. I'll badmouth them for both those reasons. But yeah, so I think we could come up with some kind of way that you can show that. Like, the one thing that I think is always missing from these discussions is networks. Like, we never, like, the one thing that we build on the most is this. This is what makes us good online learners. These 12 people that I pull from. And I think we see that in disciplinary literacies too. Like, the thing that I think that grows the most with your comprehension in new disciplines are the people you know within that discipline, not just the ways of being, the stuff. So I want to keep working on. That's where I always go back with Rebecca, like that idea of the survey of like matching people by demands. Like, we have to, the engagement's really got to be about the relationships. I think that's the same for face-to-face or online. It's relationships.
Well, and you see that as an overall kind of missed point in so much of the design that we do, right? We focus so much of the design that we do on content, on how to organize content on time, and how to align time with content of ideas of success and how those align with time and with content. And then it's like, oh wait, but who is the learner? And how do we get them to connect with one another? And how do we get them to connect with the other people in the discipline and the other people in that particular academic field, and get them to, you know, engage with the current thinking that is happening in the field in that particular discipline? I mean, that's really, for me, where the magic is in the digital. It's not that we can push more content and we can push it bigger and faster than ever before. It's that we can connect to more people and we can connect to more ideas, but somehow or another that gets lost.
One of the things that I've been thinking about recently is how much this needs to take place outside of any classroom or outside of any designed thing by the institution, and creating those spaces the learners can find each other. So you need to the institution needs to create the space so they can find each other, but then leave them alone. So I mean, I did my PhD remotely. It wasn't online, but it was remotely in the UK. And in the UK, you just work with your supervisor. You don't take courses in most PhDs. And then I was like, why didn't I have access to the whole community of PhD students in the School of Education, for example, or to other remote students so we can learn from each other? I eventually found people on Twitter and who were doing their PhDs anywhere in the world, and it was helpful. So you didn't need to sort of stick to your own institution. But sometimes there's specific things to your institution, and you do want to connect with those people. And so that when I did visit Sheffield, I would have been able to meet people and do that, but that was never that space. And I think institutions that have a lot of that kind of thing maybe need to invest in creating those spaces, even if it's just like a Facebook group or something, whatever, some other informal space.
Well, and you got to be able to get the blend right. you know, because it's got to be hybrid. I think just like they were talking about, you know, when we connected with the on-site folks, that they knew each other from these virtual environments and like, oh, I know you, but I know you as the cat avatar, right? And there's that magic when you can bridge that divide of distance through a digital means, using virtual connections, but then to also bring those into the flesh, right? That's really where things start to get magical for me, and it's not about you know, it being one or the other. It's about the blend. It's about the mixture.
So folks, I need to stop the broadcast, but you guys can still keep chatting even though I have to leave. So I don't have to leave the meeting. You know. So I'm gonna just thank you all for participating and for coming in. Thanks to all who are here for the first time. So I'm just gonna stop the broadcast, but you guys can keep talking. And here she is.
I'm gonna step over.